Okay, standing up. I am following the lesson of Pauline in my Tai Chi class this morning. Being suspended, standing tall. So I have bad news and good news, and I'm going to say the bad news first. But it's not that bad. I think you guys have already figured it out. The challenge around democracy, and I'm going to say a few words about democracy, is that Citizens United, which sort of elevated the power of corporations in the political sphere, is just the last step of continual efforts by the private sector to pull the economy out from underneath the control of the people, right? So if you think about it, that if jobs, if land, if the flow of money, your ability to get loans, are not under popular control, then what is under popular control? Then our lives, those who are poor, those who are impacted by unemployment, impacted by the criminal justice system, then our lives aren't subject to our control, okay? And so Citizens United, which people talked about as one of the priorities, is a priority. I think the other priority is really getting the economy back under the control of the people. And I think our challenge is that democracy is difficult, if not impossible, unless we decide that we're going to claim the economy and not just the political sphere. And so you all are doing that. And so the good news is that people are claiming land, growing food, preventing foreclosures, physically preventing foreclosures. And these are all acts of democracy. You all as organizers know that the challenge really is to make sure that every voice is in the public sphere. And that's really the more important part of democracy than, we talked yesterday about accountability of our elected officials. And there was a lot of cynicism about that, whether it's possible. And I'll say this, and this is the counter to the notion that accountability is difficult to achieve. You claim political space when you run people for office, okay? You claim political space, and you have to sustain your control of that space. And so it's not necessarily about whether one individual is or is not being accountable to the people who elected them. It is your ability as community organizers to keep that political space. So whether it's one city council seat, or a whole city council, or a mayor, or your county commissioners, we have to see that the battle for democracy is not about winning necessarily, but it's about expanding the space that we operate in, right? So it's not only our neighborhoods, it's not only our schools, it's not the lunches in our schools, it's all of those things. It's about economic space, our ability to feed ourselves, to make sure our people are fed and our communities are fed, and it's about political space, making sure that the political terrain is accountable to us. And that means, going back to what Pancho said, and what a lot of people in politics have been saying is, we need to get to the point where we can mobilize millions, right? Millions, not just hundreds, not just thousands, but it starts at the local level. It starts with hundreds and thousands. And at the local level, hundreds are very easy to mobilize. Anybody who's worked on a local political campaign knows that any one of you in here could run, and you could get 5 of your friends, and you could probably get elected to office with a little bit of smarts, a little bit of training, and not that much money, but maybe a little bit of money as well. And so the challenge really is to claim the space and to keep the space. The other thing I want to say is that there's a lot of good news, and we heard about it here. I'll talk about formerly incarcerated persons as one example. Those voices are not silent, even the ones that do not, for whatever reason, have the right to vote in their communities. I know in Kentucky, we heard here in New Orleans, formerly incarcerated persons without the right to vote are very active in community politics. They're very active in electoral politics. They're knocking on doors, getting people out to vote for candidates that they support. That's democracy. We need to fight for their voices. We need to fight for their whole voices. But we've already organized. In New York, they had participatory budgeting that the only requirement was that you were 16 years or older, which is a little bit problematic, I'll say that, and that you lived worked or went to school in the communities where the participatory budgeting was taking place. Nothing to do with documentation, nothing to do with citizenship or non-citizenship. So people have pushed the boundaries on this, and to the extent that they can, you can. To the extent that there are wins in some places, there can be wins everywhere. So we just need to decide that the political space is one space in democracy. It's not the entire space. We've got economic space, we've got social space. We need to claim all of those, that democracy is about our ability as people to manage our own individual destinies and to manage the destinies of our community. And so when we're fighting political battles and we're losing, when we elect a president or a governor or mayor who start off sounding progressive and then don't end up feeling like they are meeting our needs, then we recognize that we have other battles, that we're fighting other battles around jobs, around police safety, and also around food in our schools. And that the act of engaging those battles is the act of bringing more voices into the room and building democracy and practicing democracy and encouraging people to think about democracy not as an end or not as some set of policy wins, but as a mobilization of millions to say, we control our own personal lives and we control our own destinies as communities. So a lot of good news. You all are doing it, so I don't have to tell you anything. And I'm very pleased and honored to be here.